NASCAR's most intense action-packed racing. At a track where you feel it, hear it, and see it, unlike anywhere else.
Anybody that asks me when they're going to their first race, I'm sending them here.
This is the hottest ticket in NASCAR. Experience the thrills for yourself at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Roll Tide and welcome to this Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. This is Roger Hoover. Great to be with you in person, in studio, back here in Sweet Home, Tuscaloosa. Hope everyone's doing well during what's been a very busy week for Alabama athletics. We'll start our show today by taking over a look at what's coming up on the show and our headlines, thanks to our friends at RJ Young. RJ Young is the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. They've given us a smart board to go through really everything in an interactive way here with starting what's coming up on the show. First things first, we'll be talking all things Alabama football with Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports and TheAthletic as he talks about the retirement of Coach Sabin, plus Kayden Dort being named the head coach of the Crimson Tide. Then we'll be hearing from Kalen DeBoer as well as Byrne, some of their comments from the introductory press conference that we had this past Saturday in Tuscaloosa. And we'll finish things off by going to Tuesday night's Courtside cam presented by NASCAR, looking at the highlights from Chris Stewart and Brian Passink of a great win for Alabama men's basketball against Missouri. Starting our headlines today, we start with that Crimson Tide football team as everybody's talking about Kalen DeBoer, the new head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, the 28th in school history. He comes to Alabama from Washington, where he led the Huskies to a perfect regular season and the Pac-12 championship and an appearance in the national championship game. For all of that, he was named the 2023 AP Coach of the Year. If you look at his entire career with Sioux Falls, Fresno State, Washington, he's a winner, 104 and 23, a very impressive career record for Kalen DeBoer, and we'll be hearing from him coming up in just a few moments after some thoughts from Bruce Feldman. Crimson Tide men's basketball team, Alabama, continuing picking up wins in SEC play. We saw last Saturday a good road effort against Mississippi State. 82-74 was the final. Mark Sears led the way in scoring in that game. Last Tuesday, it was really all Rylan Griffin as Alabama picked up a 93-75 win over Missouri. So great performances for the Crimson Tide. Mentioned Mark Sears, a standout performance against Mississippi State. He was named the SEC Player of the Week. We love seeing that for Mark Sears. Now coming up this Saturday, a huge matchup in Knoxville. It's number 6 Tennessee. 1 p.m. will be the tip-off at the Food City Center. Our radio coverage will start at noon. If Alabama gets a win coming up in this ball game against Tennessee, you should expect the Crimson Tide in the top 25 moving forward. For the Crimson Tide women's basketball team, last Sunday had a tough second half despite the 2-point lead at halftime. It was Arkansas coming back strong to defeat Alabama. 77-59 was the final score. Alabama's 2-2 in SEC play, 0-2 at home, but 2-0 on the road. Now tonight, Alabama is at home. A bit of a later start against LSU, the reigning national champions. 8 p.m. will be the tip-off. We'll have radio coverage plus a courtside cam presented by NASCAR here on all of our social media platforms. As I mentioned, the Crimson Tide 2-2 in league play, 15-4, sitting in a pretty good spot overall. Now on Sunday, they'll get ready to take on the Auburn Tigers. Interestingly enough, Auburn this past Sunday at Neville Arena down in the Plains upset LSU. So it's a very challenging week for the Crimson Tide against LSU and Auburn coming up this week, but hope to see a lot of fans at Coleman Coliseum tonight. Speaking of Coleman Coliseum, it was good for the Crimson Tide gymnastics team to be at home for the first time this season, picking up a dominant win over Missouri. As Luisa Blanco led the way for the Crimson Tide in 3 individual events, she was able to pick up the win, and also Luisa Blanco, the co-gymnast of the week in the SEC. This week, it's Alabama home against Arkansas. 6:30 will be the start time at Coleman. It's the annual Capes and Crowns meet. We look forward to that. It will be televised on the SEC network. And by the way, with that win against Missouri last week, Alabama currently ranks 3rd in the country, so everything looking good for Alabama gymnastics. Same can be said for the Crimson Tide football team as a new era begins here with last week's retirement of Coach Sabin, and on Friday, Kalen DeBoer named the head coach of the Crimson Tide, so we thought this was a perfect opportunity to catch up with our friend Bruce Feldman, who covers college football for The Athletic. He's also a sideline reporter for Fox Sports. He gives us perspective on not only Nick Saban, but also Kalen DeBoer as we talk all things Alabama football here on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR.
Bruce, we're recording on a Wednesday. It was last week on Wednesday that we learned the news that Nick Saban was announcing his retirement as the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Just take us back to a week ago. How surprised were you at the announcement that Coach Saban was stepping away?
I mean, it's a little surreal. I mean, you were talking about the greatest football coach in the history of college football stepping down. I think, at his age, and there's been a lot of speculation when this was going to happen, but I just think that when it actually happened, I know I had heard rumors a few hours earlier before it that it could happen that night. And you try to check on the rumors because you always tried to check, couldn't get any confirmation. But then once they had the player meeting, then the word started to get out. But just the magnitude of it, I think that was the part that was like just a jaw dropper. Yeah, I think you knew it was inevitable. It's just that the moment once it happened, that was a different story.
And once it happened, he really, in a lot of ways, quietly leaves after meeting with the team. The next day, did a couple of interviews in print and on television, but that was about it for him, starting to transition away from his role. Did that surprise you at all? Did you think there'd be more of a public farewell in Tuscaloosa?
I didn't, just in that, we'd always heard that when he left, he probably was going to go end up, in some capacity, go work for ESPN on the TV side. He dabbled in that at times and been really good on camera. And so most of his farewell and send off actually came via ESPN. It was, sit down with Reese Davis. There was no formal post press conference like you sometimes see for coaches retiring or stepping down. But so I guess I wasn't shocked at that part of it. I'm sure we'll still see him in the spotlight. I know obviously he was there when Kalen DeBoer was introduced as the head coach, and I think that I suspect he will be about as accessible as he wants to be at this point.
Well, he steps away after 17 years, the head coach of the Crimson Tide, has 6 national championships in his time in Tuscaloosa, 7 overall. When you look back at this 17-year run that Coach Sabin had in Tuscaloosa, there are so many eye-popping statistics, not only the draft picks, the championships, but what do you think will stand out the most years down the road about what he did during his time here?
That he was sustainable in a time when it's not supposed to be. You have all these other challenges that other great coaches, certainly, Bear Bryant, you didn't have to deal with social media, and it was a different kind of problems and headaches that come with coaching young adults. And there's the transfer portal, and there was staff turnover. The money is way different. I mean, all those things I think feed into reasons why you can have a great run for a couple of years, but you're not supposed to be able to do it for that long. And I think to his credit, and as I'm saying this, I feel like I'm almost like eulogizing him, which I feel bad about in this regard. But like, what I think was pretty, amazing was he was constantly trying to get better and evolve and grow. And for people in their 60s, when you've done things that nobody else had done, you're just not expecting that, right? I think he navigated ego in a way that people who are at the top of their profession, and not just at the top, like you are the greatest, you know, I don't remember at what point we stopped saying he might be one of the greatest or he is the greatest. It's unquestionable in college football. That was probably like 7 or 8 years ago. Um, so to me, that's the thing, the sustainability, to do it at the hardest with the most challenges. I mean, the fact that he was able to manage staff turnover the way he did, almost nobody has been able to do that when they've had a couple of national titles. And he just kept on getting better. So, hats off to him. It's a remarkable run.
So the announcements made by Coach Saban to the team around 4 o'clock last Wednesday, and then for Greg Byrne, the next steps, he told the team, give him about 72 hours to get a new head coach in place. And we learned on Friday that Kalen DeBoer was named the head coach of the Crimson Tide. How quickly do you feel like Greg Byrne zeroed in on Kalen DeBoer?
I think once he, had that meeting with he and his wife and Kalen and his wife, I think it was like, how comfortable are we with each other on both sides of this in the relationship? Because Kalen's walking not just Kalen, right? Because we've heard a lot about Miss Terry, but Kalen's family is walking into a situation unlike anything any other coach has walked into. And I think, Greg Byrne grew up as an administrator. His dad was obviously a really successful AD for a long time. He knows the power structure and all the challenges and probably all the good things that come with being the Alabama head coach at this time and all the challenges that come from it. But I think he had I'm sure Greg has always had a list of names, but I think those names change depending on how the success of things happen. If Kalen DeBoer goes 0-3 against Oregon instead of 3-0 against Dan Lanning, I'm not sure he's as high up on the list. But I think all the success that he had on the field, what I think that really did was made people want to look and go, hey, why is this guy so successful? And then you start seeing other things that make you think, oh, he could probably handle this very well because of how he's wired. I did a big story recently for TheAthletic, just basically asking people who know him well and have been around him, what exactly is it that makes him so good? Because it's an uncanny level of success that he's had, way before that he became a head coach at Washington. He'd won a bunch of national titles at the NAI level, seemingly with just a way different way of life as a head coach in terms of resources and what you're dealing with. But I think everything I've heard is just he's been a guy who's always been true. He's very authentic, very comfortable in his own skin, and he's really unflappable in the moment and doesn't get rattled. And those things it's one thing to say you're going to be that way. It's another thing to have evidence that that's how you are.
Yeah, and along those lines, did you have a chance to cover him in person recently in the last few years? And what was it like, some of your in-person interactions with Coach DeBoer?
Yeah, he's a guy I really kind of connected with over the last couple of years. I went up and saw him last spring, last April, and spent some time around him and around the program. Really impressed. One of the better things I think I can say on him is he develops bonds and with people very quickly because there is a genuine quality about him. He has really good people skills. You come away getting it from him, like just so you feel like, okay, I can see why, I feel like I've known him longer than I actually have because of the interactions you have with him. And so I think people around the program will really, really like him because I think there is something that resonates with you. He takes time for people. And that's not easy when you're a head football coach. It's going to be harder now there than it was in Seattle. But when I say that, I mean like he knows the names of people's kids. And like that's not easy. It's one thing to know the name of like your offense coordinator's family. It's another thing when it's like layers out beyond that. And that stuff, it matters to people and it impresses people. And I think there's something real there.
Huge part of his job in this first week is building his staff, and it's been reported that Kane Womack will come over from South Alabama, be the defensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb coming with him from Washington to lead the offense. Looking at those two, what could an Alabama offense and defense look like with them in place?
Well, you got a great track record of what you saw, what it looked like with he and Grubb the last couple of years. I mean, you can't get much better of a recommendation than this. Nick Sabin really wanted to hire Ryan Grubb last year, and Ryan Grubb he went back to Seattle to still work there. I mean, I think you can't get much better than the two parts of that. Kane, I think, is really, really good. Like what he did at Indiana when it was Indiana and they had like a top 5 defense through a lot of really smart metrics of what they did. That was the most success Indiana's football had in half a century. And I think he's grew up in the SEC footprint. I think he is really good at connecting people. I think he's taken a lot from being a head coach. In a lot of ways, he will be the head coach of the defense. I think that he knows what it's like to work with Kalen because they worked together at Indiana. I mean, you got a lot of young energy there. I think so far to get the offensive staff, I mean, I know that from having talked to Ryan Grubb before, I know how much when he did interview, he really developed a relationship with Robert Gillespie, the running back house down there. He's obviously, grew up in Mississippi and longtime SEC guy. I think that their connection was strong. And so to keep him, I think, is a big piece. You get Scott Huff, who's a really, really good offensive line coach. I mean, he had the best offensive line in the country this year. He's a Chris Peterson disciple. I think he's a guy people there will really come to like. And I just think there's a lot of really promising signs of this transition so far.
So that's a huge part of it for Coach DeBoer, building his staff, but also roster management in this time with the transfer portal opening back up for Tide players after the retirement of Coach Sabin. Just how difficult of a job is it? We're recording on Wednesday. This will air on Thursday, so there could be even more names that pop in the portal between now and then. But how big of a job is it to try and hold on to this roster and kind of shape it into the way Coach DeBoer wants it to be getting ready for spring?
Yeah, it's certainly huge. I mean, Caleb Downs, I tweeted this out earlier today. I mean, when I do these, coaching scouting reports before the playoffs, there was no defensive player who the rival coaches were more effusive of than Caleb Downs. And so whether he goes to Georgia, whether he comes back, whatever, that is a huge piece. Obviously, Caden Proctor was a, 5-star offensive lineman from the Midwest who started and, is the work in progress, is a really promising young player. You're going to lose players in the transition right now. I just think that's where we're at in this time. I would probably say to, because we said this on our podcast we taped an hour or two ago, just like that's the nature of now. And there's going to be a lot of guys come and go. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of receivers who are probably going to want to be in this offense because they saw what Washington looked like the last 2 years. So I imagine this is it's going to be a very fluid situation all the way around this offseason.
Well, we're going to be keeping up with your work in The Athletic and with Fox Sports to keep track of all of it. An exciting new time here in Tuscaloosa. But Bruce Feldman, just thank you so much for your time and your insights on Alabama football. And we hope to have you join us again down the road. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Coming up is a weekend of good times, unforgettable entertainment, and 3 wide high-speed thrills all race long. That's what NASCAR Spring Weekend in Atlanta is all about, and the best way to experience it is at the track. Don't miss the Better Health 400 weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. 3 days of racing thrills, February 23rd through the 25th. Atlanta is the hottest ticket in NASCAR, so don't wait. Get your tickets now at atlantamotorspeedway.com. And right now in Tuscaloosa, the most talked about name is Kalen DeBoer, the new head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. His hiring was announced on Friday. Then on Saturday at Bryant-Denny Stadium, Coach DeBoer was introduced to a great crowd of Alabama supporters and media for his introductory press conference. Instead of our normal coaches checklist for this week, we have something a little bit different. We do hear from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Kayden Dort. Coming up in a little, we'll also hear from Byrne, getting the athletic director's thoughts on this new hire for Alabama. Kayden Dort taking over as head coach of the Crimson Tide. Here is part of his press conference from this past Saturday.
Yeah, this is exciting. This is really exciting for myself and my family. As they were introduced, I first of all, I got a lot of thank yous and people I want to show some appreciation to. But Nicole, Alexis, Avery, this journey that we're on called life, right? It's special. And, special days like this are the ones that we're never going to forget. And I can't thank them enough for their support, their love. They're the ones that allow me to each and every day leave the house, go to work, and give everything I have to our players, our staff, to help us be the best we can be. So I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and thank you. Thank you. I want to thank Greg. I know this is happening fast, and I just can't say enough about the trust that you have in me and how much I appreciate that. It means so much. We had never met, and to do your due diligence and all of that and go through the process, I really appreciate it. And I'm so excited to lock arms with you, as I am the rest of the athletic department, all the head coaches here, and continue to build on the great tradition of Alabama athletics as a whole. So many championships, so many great coaches I cannot wait to meet. We're going to continue to strive to make this thing better all together. I could go on and on about the next person I need to thank, show appreciation to, love, and you all know who that is, and Coach Sabin. We just talked for the first time yesterday, and I've been in his ear a couple times already here, and man, I can just feel in his voice. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen it for many years. You know, this place is special. It's special to him, but it's special to all of you because he's what he's built it up to be. It's not just about the championships. I met with the team last night and heard from them and heard why they came here. Okay, a lot of great reasons, all tied to the Alabama brand, the education, playing here, you know, each and every Saturday, and the support that they get. But obviously there was a major piece of that where they came here because Coach Sabin and Ms. Terry, you know, poured everything into them, and they just saw the vision and wanted to be a part of it. And you know, it's a privilege to be chosen to be in this role. It's one I don't take lightly, and I know that Coach Sabin's been working hard to make sure that this program is in a great spot for the next person to take over. I think he hasn't told me this, but I think there's an intentionality that's been in place. You know, you kind of figure out, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think you kind of know at some point, you don't know when that point is, but you want to make sure it's in a great place. And as you can see just from this past season, it's in a great place. When it comes to our goals, I shared with you it's to win the SEC and a national championship, but how are we going to do that? We're going to do that with class. We're going to do it with integrity, okay, with academic excellence. And that is my job to make sure we uphold the standard that has been set here at Alabama and continue to build on that. When it's about winning, you know, it's also about a culture. And I will share with our guys that as we already have here a culture that is contagious, and you'll hear me say that many times, I cannot wait to add to that, continue to make it to where you can feel through the TV screen when someone's watching a game how hard our guys play and how much they love each other and care for each other and how badly they want to win for all of you. And, you know, the culture will be contagious, and more people, just as it's been, will want to continue to be a part of this. And the last piece, when it comes to developing players athletically, academically, socially, and even spiritually, okay, and that being our focus as a staff, we, in the end, want to make sure that we're building better men. We want to build better men because someday, okay, football will be over, okay? Someday, real life will hit you in the face. And building better men and this time that we're going through, this phase in their life, it is one of the most influential that they will have. And it is a privilege, it is an honor to be someone in a position that can have that influence. And I don't take that lightly, and I will surround myself with a staff that will be great husbands, great fathers, great people, provide a template for our great players that come through here to understand what it looks like to be a man. And that's an awesome goal. Our staff will have a lot of attributes and qualities, and that will definitely be one of them. And so, you know, developing athletically, academically, socially, and spiritually.
NASCAR's most intense action-packed racing at a track that's built to thrill you all weekend long. It's the hottest ticket in NASCAR, and it's only at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
So we've heard from the head coach of the Crimson Tide. How about the director of athletics for the University of Alabama, Greg Byrne, as he had the task in replacing Coach Sabin with a new head coach in Tuscaloosa. As part of his introduction for Coach DeBoer on Saturday, he laid out the reasons why Kalen DeBoer is the right man to lead this Alabama program moving forward.
When I met with the team the other day after Coach announced his retirement, I asked them to give us 72 hours to help find our next head coach. I received a text from a friend shortly thereafter that said, every coaching search day feels like the equivalent of 7 days. When you're in the middle of it, there's some truth to that. Even with that, we were able to hire Coach DeBoer in 49 hours. Regina and I want to thank her for all of her support during this. We had a great conversation with Coach DeBoer and Nicole in Seattle just 2 days ago. And from there, I knew he was the right choice for the Crimson Tide. Simply put, Coach DeBoer is a winner. In his 9 seasons as a head coach, he's 104-12. He went 25-3 in his 2 seasons at Washington after taking over a challenging situation. As we know and watched, he just led the Huskies to the 2024 College Football Playoff National Championship game. Washington won the 2023 Pac-12 Championship. They recorded the most wins in a season in Washington program history with 14 last year. He won 6 of the 8 National Coach of the Year awards in 2023 and is back-to-back Pac-12 Coach of the Year award winner. In his last 2 years, his teams went 10-1 against ranked opponents. The list goes on and on. He's a ball coach. Impressive as those accolades are, what stands out equally as much are his relationships off the field and the way he cares about his players. One of the many things I felt responsibility for in this search was to make sure we had someone who cared for our kids just as much as Coach and Miss Terry did. And at the end of the day, when we're hiring a coach, I ask a simple question, because I got to keep it pretty simple for myself. Is this someone I would want my son to play for? The answer for Coach DeBoer is absolutely.
Crimson Drive is driven by NASCAR and a weekend of good times, unforgettable entertainment, and 3 wide high-speed thrills all race long is coming up with the Better Health 400 weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. 3 days of racing thrills from February 23rd to the 25th. Get tickets now at atlantamotorspeedway.com. Speaking of NASCAR, not only a great presenting sponsor of this show, Crimson Drive, but also they sponsor the Courtside Cam that we will have running tonight for Alabama women's basketball against LSU coming up at 8 p.m. right back here on the CTSN Facebook and YouTube pages. And also we have it for each and every men's basketball home game, including last Tuesday night when the Alabama Crimson Tide were at home against Missouri, coming off that great win at Mississippi State. It was Alabama against Mizzou Tuesday evening, and we had a lot of fun on the Courtside Cam presented by NASCAR. Here are all the highlights from Tuesday night with Chris Stewart and Brian Pasnick on the call.
And we'll get started. Bama in white, Mizzou in black. Ball's in the air, and Nick got to it first. And the jump ball is indeed controlled by the Crimson Tide with Sears. Mizzou filling in defensively as Sears will drive to the elbow. Throws the skip pass left side. Catch and shoot 3, bottom. Grant Nelson. Sears with the basketball. Skip pass all the way left side. Estrada all alone. 3, bottom.
Alabama has the ability to get hot. The best three-point shooting team in the SEC. Aaron Estrada wide open in rhythm, knocks it down.
Great work by Aaron. Now trying to shake free in the corner. Swings it back to Sam. Try it again, baby. Sam Walters knocking home a bank first 3. Works on the near wing. Gets into the paint. Schemes it over. 3 ball. Good. The trowel Reitzel knocks home the bank first 3, and Alabama has a 14-10 advantage.
Defense leading to offense. Sam Walters gets the steal. Dropped it off to Aaron Estrada, who makes the right decision, finding Reitzel on the wing.
In the corner, Estrada driving into the lane. Spin. And scores.
Oh, that was beautiful. So smooth. Aaron Estrada, second chance opportunity as Missouri gets the timeout. And listen to this Coleman Coliseum crowd.
Sears around to Griffin, throws it in the corner. Estrada, 3, 5. Boy, he's had a nice game, hasn't he? Sears to Nelson, hands it off to Diabate. Mo pivots, looks, back to Nelson again. Nelson says, get out of the way, I got a mismatch. Gives it off Sears, near side, deep 3. And the lid has come off. Bama works it inside Nelson. Great pass, Diabate off the glass, got it to go. Oh, Mo got it to drop on a great feed from Nelson, and the Tide leads by 8.
What a pass from Grant Nelson, and the finish, the hang time by Mo Diabate.
Pivots, needs help. Still needs help, gives it off to Griffin, top of the arc, catch and shoot 3, bottom. That's as confident a stroke as we've seen from Rylan Griffin. Estrada bringing it ahead, directing traffic as Mizzou goes zone. This trip down into the corner, all alone. Reitzel, 3 ball, bottom. Alabama starting to heat up from bank first. 3-point range, 9 made threes on 22 attempts. Griffin Working left, almost walked, but feeds Nelson. Gets a return feed. Griffin now for three. Oh, he's heating up. Rylan Griffin has made 2 of the last 3 from deep. Griffin working top of the arc. Lets it fly. Oh, is he hot? Oh. Rylan, a little something to his game tonight, boy. Getting into the lane. Give it back to Rylan. He does. Griffin, step back 3. Oh, it is his world. We are just living in it, baby. Red, smoking, hot, Rylan Griffin. 19 as Bama leads it by 13. Hands it off to Pringle, back to Griffin, now to Reitzel for 3, and he buries another bank first 3. Latrell Reitzel now with 11. And it's all over but the shouting, folks. Alabama wins it by a final score of 93-75 and strike up the band. Final of 93-75 over Missouri.
Courtside Cam, always a lot of fun. Thanks to our friends at NASCAR, especially after an Alabama win. That's what we're hoping for later tonight in women's basketball, just like the men's team in the highlights you just saw from Tuesday's win against Tuesday. Speaking of what's coming up tonight and all over this weekend, let's take a look at our upcoming schedule. It is always presented by Wickles Pickles. They are wickedly delicious. We always have them with us on set here in Tuscaloosa. You can have them at your home. Just go online to wicklespickles.com. Again, they are wickedly delicious. Let's see what's coming up across the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Well, Crimson Drive today at 2 o'clock. Later tonight at 8 o'clock, it is women's basketball against LSU. As we mentioned, we will have the Courtside Cam available right back here on our social media platforms, plus full radio coverage as well for Alabama against the defending national champion LSU Lady Tigers. Tomorrow, keep an eye on your television. It's the Nate Oates television show and Tide TV this week. New episodes of that coming up all across our television network, plus online on the Alabama Athletics YouTube channel. Saturday, it's men's basketball back in action. A thrilling showdown coming up in Tennessee, 1 p.m. the start time. Radio coverage will start at noon. Then on Sunday, another rival is on the schedule, the Auburn Tigers. That'll be Alabama women's basketball's opponent on Sunday, with our coverage starting at 1:55 for that broadcast of Alabama at Auburn, as the Crimson Tide try to continue a long winning streak against the Tigers. Then on Monday night, Hey Coach with Nate Oates. Also, we're expected to be hearing from Rob Vaughn, baseball coach as well, on Monday's edition of Hey Coach, 6 to 7 o'clock at Baumhauer's Victory Grill here in Tuscaloosa, and we will have a video stream available of that as well. For the latest on the Crimson Tide, just follow us on our social media networks listed below. A lot of clips coming up over the weekend as well, with everything that's going on with Alabama athletics. That's our upcoming schedule, presented by Wickles Pickles. And that's going to wrap up this busy Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Huge thank you to our guest, Bruce Feldman, who joined us earlier in the show. If you joined us a little bit later, I invite you to all to kind of rewind back or catch that on demand. We'll also have it archived on the Alabama Insider podcast, as well as our CTSN YouTube page. Thanks as well to Ethan Carabin. He put this entire show together, and thanks to all of you for watching. Now let's get ready for what we hope to be a thrilling weekend against some of our rival schools. Women's basketball has LSU and Auburn. Men's basketball has Tennessee. Let's get some wins for the Crimson Tide. Let's sing Rammer Jammer. A lot coming up this weekend, but enjoy everything that's coming up. We'll be back with this show next Thursday at 2 o'clock, right back here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. For everybody with the network, this is Roger Hoover saying thank you for watching again, and Roll Tide.